Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here from the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook updated on Monday the 14th of October. The overriding message is still one of being rather unsettled and on the cool side as well, with temperatures on the highest Scottish mountains fairly persistently at or even just below freezing point as we head through the second half of this week and onwards into the weekend and just beyond. Low pressure will be in charge and there'll be some areas of rain and heavy showers and some snow on those highest Scottish tops. Now if we start off with a look at temperatures, this chart is the 850 millibar level that we often use in forecasting. Currently that's around 1300 metres, so we're corresponding neatly to the highest tops in Scotland. And jumping forwards to Wednesday, when a front will be passing eastwards across the country, and a fairly cool air mass that follows is the one that will then dominate over several days ahead, and temperatures shown on this chart at that level at around freezing point, maybe just above but barely on those Scottish tops, and the 850 millibar level will tend to drop a little bit, which means that we'll find it around 1200 metres or so. So the temperatures shown here are at that sort of level, 1 degree, go up a little bit higher onto the highest top then around Ben Nevis, Cairngorm Plateau, and you're probably going to be just below zero. And quite persistently over several days this takes you onwards through into the weekend and just beyond. As the airflow turns more north to northwesterly, we might just find an even chillier push of air over a couple of days into the start of next week before things start to turn back toward the Atlantic and look a little bit milder ahead into next week. So with all that in mind, let's have a look through the synoptic charts, and it's still a real mess. It's one that's given us the real runaround in terms of confidence in recent days to get the detail out of things. Often these slowly evolving situations with small centres of low pressure do just create that difficulty in forecasting, and even today the best of the computer models are struggling to handle it from day to day. There's Tuesday then, a low pressure centre is over the North Sea, that pulling away gradually. It'll have left a legacy of murk and a lot of low cloud, which will tend to lift and break gradually. It may be rather slow to do so, if perhaps not even breaking at all across some eastern mountains in Scotland. The weak front, which is lying to the west of Scotland, not really making any inroads. It may produce some high-level cloud, perhaps a few spits and spots around the far west coast. For many places, though, through Tuesday, it's a dry day with not too much wind around, with the slack pressure pattern in charge. One or two showery bits of rain may just affect Wales. The next fronts are moving in off the Atlantic, and that will come in through overnight into Wednesday. So that's where we get to by the middle of the day on Wednesday. Now a slow-moving occluded front is likely to be draped across the Highlands, that edging its way northeastwards with time through the day. Some heavy and prolonged falls, particularly over southern parts of the Highlands, round from, say, Mull towards Loch Lomond, the Central Highlands seeing the heaviest of that rain through the day. Further north you go, a greater chance of just patchier rain. A spell of heavy rain will sweep through across northern England and soon gone from Wales. One or two showers following, but the brief ridge of higher pressure that just builds from the west will largely kill off those showers, so actually brightening up into a good-looking day for much of Wales and improving through into the afternoon for the Pennines and the Lakes too. Gusty winds, very gusty winds, gale force around that front though, particularly in the morning ahead of it. A generally windy day then onwards into Thursday, typically from the south to southwest. A real washing machine of low pressure will then just edge its way in from the Atlantic, and that'll be in charge then for a few days ahead. It's a fairly unstable atmosphere that's coming in. It's what we would refer to as polar maritime returning. It's air that's originated off the North Atlantic around Greenland, been taken southwards, gathered up some extra humidity and moisture, and just throws that energy out in the form of heavy bursts of rain, and those may even contain a rumble of thunder and some hail possibly in those heavier bursts, typically focused on western regions where it may well set in, especially across southwest Scotland through the day on Thursday, the risk of setting in across West Wales as well, and some bursts of rain tracking ever further toward the Pennines as the day goes on. Towards the far north of Scotland, you may just escape with a largely dry picture. I mention it being a bit like a washing machine because there we go into Friday. The whole thing just circulating around itself, and that will continue even onwards into the weekend. Difficulty with detail, any one of these fronts or troughs could just spin around itself, so I won't try and get too clever, but basically to say we've got some heavy bursts of rain running in from the southwest. The wind may be strong across the southern half of Britain, nearer to the centre of the low and where the isobars open out a bit across Scotland. It may be that the winds drop quite light through the day on Friday, and that will mean if we do catch any showers, they'll move around slowly. If you miss them, you might not see any over a good many hours. So a real hit and miss sort of day in terms of what you get on Friday. And that'll be the same story into Saturday. The broad centre of low pressure really opening itself out across the northern half of Britain. There may not be too much wind around. It could be a very good day in many places with just a few local slow-moving showers. It looks as though almost the energy of the centre of the deeper part of the low is further south, which is poorer news for Wales perhaps. Again, I won't try and get too clever with that detail. This could chop and change a bit as the computer models run over the next few days. A real hit and miss story then ongoing. What does look likely though as we go through the weekend is that broad low will just shuffle itself further eastwards with time, and that draws in that chillier air mass further from the north. Not a true Arctic air mass, it's still only really circulating around at that low, so not going desperately cold, but it maintains that chilly feel with the highest Scottish tops at least at or just below freezing. A chance for a dusting then on those higher levels where you're staying sub-zero over a good few days, not amounting to a great deal, but much of the precipitation that comes down on those higher tops will be of snow. We've got a ridge of higher pressure showing itself as edging its way in from the west through into the start of next week. It may be a rather slack pattern. This chart, as we move on toward the middle of the week, shows things becoming more mobile with time, but the early part of the week, I suspect, is rather slack autumnal weather. And then some changes, I would think, as higher pressure starts to build across the southern half of Britain. We draw in a milder southwesterly fetch as lower pressure moves a bit more towards Iceland. It may mean that for England and Wales you become comparatively drier over a few days and quite mild. The relatively milder air also expanding north into Scotland, but here there's the risk of Atlantic fronts trailing in on those southwesterly winds. The detail is up for grabs, and the exact sequence and timing onwards into next week is very tricky at this stage. The only real hint that one or two models are really going for is that higher pressure is just a bit nearer to us, particularly across England and Wales compared to what we've seen recently. We've had a very lack of high pressure in the last couple of weeks, anything at all. We've been just pretty unsettled all the way through, so maybe a chance for a few quieter days the further south you are into next week. So something a little bit wintry on the higher tops through this upcoming week ahead. That may not last though as we go into the longer range detail, as those milder winds look as though they return into the final 10 days of October. We'll see how all of that pans out, of course, and I'll update the video for you again on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.